Wrap up now, lads. Can you hear me now? Yeah, I'm gone off I'm gone off YouTube now, Mark. This mic went off. 2 seconds there now. They can hear us now, yeah?
Jeez. Can you hear me now? You can. I can hear you now. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Can the people hear me, Paul?
Can you hear Mark, lads? Or can you hear me now? Think they can hear us both?
Aye. Yeah, I think that's us, Paul.
Right, on with the show, as they say.
Woohoo! Sorry about that, lads. Sorry. I can't really test it without being live, and I should actually have wrote down the setting for it. But
you did that on purpose because you knew it was going to be a short tonight. So you wanted to be on longer, you bollocks.
Just to let all the fans get in, Paul. Do you know what I mean?
Hello and welcome to episode 88 of Celtic Rumours TV, the Bawz and Bovril podcast with your host Mark and myself, Paul. You can check all out our links to the podcast in the description below. Our form to the podcast is www.celticrumours.co.uk. We all Celtics, the supporters, discuss all things Celtic. On tonight's show, we will take a look at the latest transfer gossips around Celtic, some rumours of players linked with Celtic. We will go through a list of players that have been circling around the media. We will also look at the latest players released by Celtic Football Club last week, and were Celtic right to let them go, or were they just simply not good enough? Mark Lawwell is now in the house, and we will look at what difference we expect him to make at Celtic, and we'll be looking through the latest on Cameron Carter-Vickers and Jota's contract situation. They haven't signed yet, as everyone knows, but myself and Mark will talk through it, what we think is going on behind the scenes, and also we'll be looking through the live chat. So if there's anything you want us to post, please let us know. But before all that, before we hand the mic off to Mark for a few shout-outs, there's a big shout-out to Campsy Boy, Jobbers, Steph Boy, United Ireland, TB 1888 and Welchie. 2 weeks ago, Mark's laptop crashed. I contacted Welchie on the forum and on Discord, explained the situation to him, and we set up a fundraiser. And these lads, as they always do, helped us out here with the podcast. They helped out Mark with a new laptop. And just for myself, Marcus, you deserve this. The lads, stop the lads on the Discord knew that you deserved it, and it was well deserved. And look, we hope you enjoyed the laptop, and it'll help the podcast grow in years to come. So big thanks to the lads. No, I'll hand
definitely, Paul. Honestly, I just feel so humbled by it. You know what I'm like, Paul, when it comes to things like that. Tell Welsh you know to do it, and you still went and done it. But really, all the guys you said there, thanks for the bottom of my heart. He's really helped pull me out a bit of a hole. So I really appreciate that, and so did my wife, Paul. Really, you know I've been saying it to you for days now. I really you've kind of threw me there a bit, Paul, because I didn't know you were going to bring it up. So just thanks very much to everybody that helped out. As I said, I really do appreciate it. So just back our usual wee shout outs to Tim Alloy, Richie, a wee special mention to a Glasgow Green. He's not keeping too well the now, so I hope he's feeling a wee bit better and can get whatever he's getting through the now. So shout out to him. Let's see who have we got in the live chat tonight. Jabber's there. Jabber, thanks very much, mate, for what you've done for us. There's Stubbsy, Mikey, if you want to come on, just let us know, mate. There's nobody, I don't think Terence is coming on, is he, Paul?
No, he's
so if you're not doing any, Mikey, and you want to come on, Stubbsy, hail Stubbsy boy here, Brian in as well. I see Brian posting a wee bit more regular on the forum and that as well, so that's good to see.
And also, Mark, there's one shout out to TB 1888, because you haven't been on Discord for a while. It's actually his 59th birthday today, I think. So big shout out there to TB's there. Happy birthday, mate.
Happy birthday, TB, mate.
So with rumours circling around again about players that will Celtic are supposed to be injured, one player that has popped up again is young attacking midfielder Christopher Scott, a 19-year-old Bayern Munich player. As stated by my good self on episode 83, that Celtic were seriously interested in him. A fee of around 250,000 sterling is rumoured to what Celtic have offered for a player of 1.5 million, who was valued back at 1.5 million. This is a strange thing here, Mark, right? His contract is up on June the 30th, right? So I was looking into it. There's no year extension on it from Bayern Munich. Do you get me? There's nothing there.
Aye. Seems to be quite a common thing these days.
Yeah.
But they never seem to tell you.
Yeah, but the thing that I'm looking at, Mark, is because Celtic are so interested in this lad, and there's actually a lot of teams from France and Spain actually looking at him, that I think that this is why Celtic actually put in this bid. That Bayern Munich said to them, if they put in this bid, that they'll get the player. And I think he wants to join Celtic as well. But it's a strange remark that Celtic are going for a player that is his contract is up on June the 30th. But
Paul, but that'll probably mean it's like it'll be like it'll be like similar to Karamoko Dembele's situation.
Mm-hmm.
There'll still be money due on that contract. You know what I mean? While the other day when there was a question on the forum about it, and I actually asked Dead 2 to help us out with it a bit. And I don't think he picked it right, but he said to me backstage on the budget we use it. If there's money, he says there's money. Obviously, there'll be money due because he's the development fee or training compensation, whatever you want to call it. But they try and negotiate that.
Yeah,
that's what Ed 2 says. They try and negotiate that fee without having to get down the actual kind of route of dragging UEFA and all that into it with that. Because they've got a formula kind of thing that they use to work it out, and it depends. It's like see young Dembele leaving Scotland. The UEFA formula wouldn't come up with as much money as it would for Scott because he's coming for like a higher rated league. That all comes into it and stuff like that as well. So it's just, it's basically just a case. I think that's what we'll be trying to sort out, just to save it. It's made years ago they used to call it like going to a tribunal. I mean, they used to get transfer tribunals that set a transfer fee and that. I think it's just to save all that the clubs actually did and try and negotiate it out themselves.
So he's 19 years of age. He signed from Bayern Munich from Bayern Leverkusen by then manager Hans Fickel, who Mark highly regarded this player as a great talent. Straight down to the youths, Mark. He came into them when he was 16 years old. He broke on through to under 17s, under 18s, under 19s, and under 20s. And now last season he was involved with the Bayern Munich reserves. At the time when he signed for Bayern Munich, the exact words from Hans was a promising young player who dribbles, who's fast, who looks for space, and I've highly great hopes for this young player to break in. As we know, Hans left, Mark. He left Bovril to take up the role in Germany, and that seems to be the problem for Scott now. Is that in the last year of Hans's year at Bayern Munich, Scott was actually breaking into the first team. He got promoted to the first team squad. He was training with them. He played 2 competitive games as a sub, and he thought that next season he'd kick on. But then, as you know, Hans left. He joined Germany, and in came Nagelsmann, who basically Mark didn't. As we know, as we see, Mark, he didn't bring young players through. He went away. He spent money. He bought players from Borussia Dortmund. He bought players from Bayern Leverkusen, and that's what we saw, Mark, at Celtic. It's a similar situation, Mark. What we did over the years is that it stopped Scott then from breaking through to the first team. He was basically thrown back down, Mark, to the reserves, and this partly pissed off Scott. It pissed off his agents. He's a German international, Mark. He played for Germany on the 16s, 17s, 18s, 19s, 20s.
Definitely got a good pedigree about him, there's no doubt about it.
Like,
Just Stubbsy saying, Paul, do you think he's first team ready? I don't know that much about him, Paul, but I reckon,
Mark,
I think he'd be in the squad anyway, Paul.
I'm looking at Mark, right, and I'm looking at what I'm reading, like, is Matali, is it Matali, Mark, is it Mali Boy, is it 67 on the
Mali Tally, aye.
Mali, he asked the same question, like he asked, like, he's been playing youth level and he's been playing level 2 and level 3 for Bayern Munich. Like, is he ready? Like, but we've seen youngsters this year come in under Ange, Mark, who have been ready.
Well, he's the same age as Abada when he came in, into 19.
So you look at, Mark, like Bayern Munich's youth system is like our Colts team. We're talking about Bawz and Lawwell, Mark, that we expect him to break into the first team next season. So there's no difference. Like, if we sign a player from Bayern Munich's youth system, that doesn't mean he's not ready.
No, not at 19, Paul, and I mean, I'm kind of running the Scottish game down, but at 19-year-old, if he's good enough to have made even a couple of appearances for Bayern Munich, he'll be good enough for the majority of the games in the SPL. There's no doubt about it. I think he'll be. I'm not saying he'll be a regular. He'll be a regular starter, Paul, but I think he'll start a lot of games on the bench and get a lot of game time.
I think, Mark, looking at the way he plays, he could provide support for O'Reilly and Hayate in that area. Now that Rogic is gone, he could be the one that will be
Rogic's replacement, that kind of thing.
That's what I'm thinking, Mark. Yeah, because he can play both wings, left and right, but his main position is an attacking midfielder. So it's either in the midfield attacking, or it's going to be Rogic, I think, or behind the number 10 role, Mark, is what he really likes. So I think he could be, Mark, maybe the player that is looking to replace Rogic with. You know what I mean? If it's not right away, Mark, that he will come in there in the future.
And there, you know? I think Turnbull will get the game time that Rogic was getting, Paul.
I don't think so, Mark.
No.
I can see this fella, looking what I'm reading of this fella, Mark, I think he'd be more suited.
Maybe one of these things in signing, Paul, is that he gets, like, kind of guarantee game time. Maybe as I said, maybe not a starter or that, Paul, but he's not going to. He kind of fell out and took a wee bit of the huff of the way Bayern Munich kind of flung him back down their system.
They don't want him to leave, Mark. That's the problem.
I know.
They don't want him to leave.
He's not going to like take that stance against a club the size of Bayern Munich to come to Celtic to sit in the youth team or anything like that.
Mark. Why is he going to leave Bayern Munich if he's going to be thrown out to our Colts team here?
No.
And we're not even guaranteed there's going to be a Colts league.
I know, that's another thing as well.
We'll touch on that actually in a minute, Mark, before we finish. But I think, Mark, if you look at him, and what I've read about him, is he's an Ange player, out and out. He's fast, likes to dribble with the ball, and likes to, something like Kyogo, Mark, likes the ball to come into him and likes to do it on the turn and then run. Constantly looking for space, Mark, that he'll be able to bring in more players into the team. So he's like Kyogo, Mida, Abada, Jota, Mark, players that we had who just don't stop and they're constantly running. I think, Mark, like, the player's valued at 1.5 million, Mark, at 19 years of age, and he's not even in the Bayern Munich starting lineup like that. With a price tag like that, Mark, and if you're not getting your game, there must be something good about you if you're valued at 1.5 million, Mark.
You just said, Paul, Bayern Munich aren't keen to let him go, sir.
No.
They obviously know that he's a decent enough player, and he can come through the Bayern Munich system like that, Paul. Again, you compare coming through a system at Bayern Munich to coming through. We've spoke about it with the young lads that have left Celtic to go to Bayern Munich. It's a different level, Paul. Mm-hmm. So when you're seeing a young player wants out of Bayern Munich and he's willing to come to Celtic, I think it's a real big coup for Celtic to actually get him, because there'll be a lot of interest in that young boy. There definitely will.
So yeah, Mark, there's I think Villarreal are looking at him. The Seville, Espanyol are looking at him. Marseille are looking at him. Like they're the only things, Mark, I can see around Europe.
Like
Brucey Dykes,
that's just like the ones that are public and getting rumoured about, Paul.
exactly.
But there'll
Yeah,
be plenty of teams I'll have known that that boy was available. Do you know what I
well,
mean?
yeah. Leverkusen want him back, Mark. There's Brucey Dortmund. The reason the then manager, was it Hans Finkel, I think was his name, Mark. Wasn't he the old? He's the German manager now, isn't he? Hansi.
Aye.
When he signed him, Mark, he signed as a 16-year-old, and he convinced Bayern Munich that this fella would be going through the stages every year, and he progressed every year at the club. And we're constantly saying, Mark, about Celtic buying the best young talent that there is in Scotland, develop them, and now we're buying the best young talent, Mark. I think that's in Germany is this lad. Like he's 19 years of age, Mark, and we have a manager now, Mark, who believes in youth. This lad could be an unbelievable size, Mark. What we see, what Ange can do with players last season. Do you know what I mean? This could be a gem. You know.
I totally agree, Paul. I really do. To be honest, Paul, I'm a bit actually surprised that we're getting him.
No, exactly.
Or
Mark.
it looks like we're going to be getting him. It's no finalised of that, but as I said, it's a coup. There was plenty of interest in the lad, and if Celtic's done enough to
Celtic were looking at
convince him.
Celtic were looking at him in January. So Celtic were looking. That's when he came. This isn't just a name that has popped up, Mark. I said it, Mark, when Barry was here, and I'm not trying to fucking blow my hole, but I said Celtic have scouted this fella last season 5 times. We've scouted him 5 times. Celtic scouts. So we're not just a name that's popped up. They've done the research on
And
the
they've done their homework.
and actually saw the player through the videos, Mark, through the data, through everything. Like I think, Mark, this is going to be like if we're looking like they always say, Mark, that you see Celtic fans now looking like a marquee signing, Mark, and stuff like that. Maybe this young lad, like not at that age, Mark. I know he's not a big name, but
But he could prove to be.
he could be. That's what I'm saying, Mark. Like we got Kyoga, Maeda, Riohase. Like they weren't marquee names, but they were marquee names, Mark, in Japan. Yeah.
Look at Abada, young boy at
Yeah.
19 coming in for a strange country, all the usual stuff moving for culture shock and everything. And, I mean, that must be one of the best debut seasons in a Celtic player in a long time.
Without doubt. Without doubt, Mark. Like I think, Mark, that this is.
You're talking to, I mean, Scott Sinclair, you could probably say he'd that kind of effect on the team, but I thought Abada, he had his ups and downs, Paul, and be lulls, but he'd an injury, he had COVID and all this stuff, but overall for the season, for the first season, what a signing that Lila Abada's turned out to be, it really has.
Exactly. Like you look at the Bayern Munich reserves team, Mark, and you no doubt that they'll probably finish top 4 league.
Oh, aye, just doubt, Paul. Aye,
probably how good they are. Do you know what I mean? And he played 46 games for them last season, Mark, for the reserves. But he just wasn't happy, Mark, to spend another season down in the reserves leagues.
well, especially if you've had a taste of the top
Exactly.
team, Paul, isn't it? It's a bit. I've seen it happen with players at Celtic, and you do kind of feel a wee bit sorry for the likes of. You mind who was a young boy? Mind he came on and scored in Ronnie Dyler's last game?
Who's that again, Mark?
Jack Aitchison.
Yes.
No, I mean, you always like to see players in their academy coming through and making the first team. And not just at Celtic, any club's the same. If a player comes through the academy, they've got a wee kind of soft spot in the fans' hearts just because of that kind of thing. But there's just something Celtic need to look at as well, Paul. We spoke about that,
And-
improving the turnover of players for the academy that are actually getting into the first team.
Another interesting thing too, Mark, when I was looking through the Bayern Munich youth players is our lad who we just mentioned that left Celtic to go to Bayern Munich was Liam Morrison, right?
Uh-huh.
His contract is actually up in June 30th. Now, we'll have to wait and
Are
see.
you sure?
Yes, June the 30th, his contract is up. There's an option of a year's extension, Mark, in it, which actually hasn't been activated yet. Now, Celtic were actually pissed off that he left Celtic that time, Mark. There was uproar with the fans because we lost a highly talented player. Because Mark, watch this space. Could Celtic look to bring him? I'm not saying it, but could they look to bring him back if no things activated?
That's an interesting one, that, Paul.
I didn't even know, Mark, till I was looking at this fella Scott, and I was looking down the list of players, and I saw Lee Morrison. I just clicked him to look at his profile, and his contract expires the 30th of June with an option to buy, but it hasn't actually. I'm expecting it to be activated, Mark. That's what a lot of the things people were saying, that it will be activated, but if it's not, like, Mark, I've no doubts that Celtic, or if they're looking at Scott, they're aware of Lee Morrison's contract situation as well, Mark. You know?
That's weird, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I'm doubting you, Paul, just double checking that there. You joined Bayern Munich.
16, Mark. He joins, he's there 3.5 years, 3-year
No,
contract.
I'm talking about Morrison.
Yeah, he joined them when he was 16.
No, the
That's
boy
3
Morrison.
years.
That
Yeah.
we gave to Bayern Munich, what you were
Liam
saying about his
Morrison.
contract there, aye. That's crazy, isn't it? He joined him on the 1st of January, contracted, he only signed a 6-month contract.
No, Mark, he's gone from Celtic, Mark, about 3 years. The young lad, that's 3 years now, man. That's a long time since he left by. It only started coming to light because of what he said to the media here. He's gone actually 3 years.
Who?
Liam Morrison.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is, Mark. Yes, he's gone 3 years. Only the talk where we started talking in the podcast, Mark, is because he came out in the media, and he was talking in the media about his lack of development in at Celtic, and that's why he came out after Neil Lennon left, Mark. He came out, started saying stuff then that Lee Lennon blackly blocked his pathway and told him he's gone 3 years. 3 years, Mark, he's gone.
No, he's not.
Liam Morrison is out of contract with Bayern Munich at the end of the month. Should Celtic look to bring him back? That's what I'm looking at here now. What are you looking at?
I'm looking at, well, Paul, just Google his name there. One of the headlines, 4th of June 2021, Bayern Munich are planning for the future after completing the signing of Scottish teenager Liam Morrison for Celtic.
Don't he get a year's contract so off America?
But see, when you look at his profile on Transfer Market, Paul, it says he joined Bayern Munich on 2022. His contract expires in June the 30th, 2022. Here, I'll stick a link to that.
Yeah, I have it. So was it only a 6-month, Mark, to see how he's going? So was it?
That's a weird. Will
he get his extension, Mark?
It's a strange one, but Paul, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. So that's maybe, Mark, he just saw it was an opportunity for him, so Mark, to get in there, and hopefully play for that year and see if he can get that year extension. But it hasn't been offered to him yet, which is strange, really, Mark, because of all their hype with him to get him at Celtic that time,
That's threw me a bit there, Paul.
Moving on. No, Mark, this is actually a very interesting one that has popped up through our reliable journalist, Mark, Dan Olsvich from Japan, who's very, very rarely wrong, Mark, with stuff.
No.
Another player on Celtic's radar is Israeli defensive midfielder Mohamed Abdul Fani. That's his name, Mark.
Brilliant.
There's Israeli international who plays his football with Makahev in Israel. The 20-year-old defensive midfielder is considered by Celtic as a direct replacement for his teammate and Israel international Neil Beaton, who recently left Celtic and is in talks to sign for Maccabi. Dan states, Mark, could Beaton sign for them, make way for Celtic to make their move for Mohamed. Now, Mark, the interesting thing here is his agent.
No. His uncle.
His uncle. and his
Well,
agent, he is, Mark.
do pop him up again, eh?
And his agent, Mark. He's his agent as well.
I know. Craziness, isn't it?
Provided us with previous players, Mark. El Hamid, Neil Bishan, our star from last season, Mark, as you mentioned, leader Bada.
Back to Kyle and everything.
Yeah.
But let's not forget, Paul, guys like Colin Kazim Richards in that as well.
Berkovic, Mark, he was involved in that time.
Was he as long ago as that?
Yeah, when Berkovic was there. He was only started off. If Beaton signs, like I'm watching this,
Beaton signs for that team in Israel and we sign this guy kind of thing.
That's
funny.
Exactly, Mark, that I'm thinking that's what's going on there. Because this fella is an Israeli international. Beaton plays in centre back for Israel. This fella plays the defensive midfield role for Israel. The player that we're saying, Mark, we need is a defensive midfielder. Another one, Mark, that could be on Celtic's radar. You know, and it looks when you read about it, like it makes a bit of sense. Like if Beaton is going there,
it just seems like the stars are aligning for it kind of thing, doesn't it, Paul?
And again, our fella Mark as well, Dan's linked us with this player again. We discussed it, Mark, on episode 83 with Barry, is Ko Itakura of Man City, who was on loan at Schalke last season. Celtic tried to sign the centre-back on loan as well last season, but he decided to join Schalke instead. Schalke actually had an option to buy the player, but due to lack of funds and other areas that need strengthening, they withdrew their bid for option to buy. Dan Olfitz, the sports journalist in Japan, said he was interviewed while on Japanese international duty, and he stated that he's actually delighted that Celtic seem to have still interested in him now, especially that his fellow Japanese teammates Kyogo, Miida, Hiyase and Gucci are all playing for Celtic. He said he's spoken to them about the club. He's very happy what he heard of them, and with Mark Lawwell coming to Celtic, Mark, I think this is another no-brainer. I know they're only rumours, Mark, but when you dig into them, they do make sense where Celtic are kind of going with these players. You know?
Right. It seems to see the thing about it as well, Paul. See these kind of all these rumours that are flying about. I think a lot of them do have like a kind of basis in reality that this summer ways, Paul. Because as you say, everything adds up. You know what I mean? Everything's adding up. It's not just crazy names for the back of. Do you know what I mean? You can put the pieces together and see why that could be like a feasible.
Yeah, it was once you go digging, Mark, you can see it, like, you know what I mean? And do you remember last season, he was actually in the stands with Fergal Harkin, that time for a European match. He was actually invited to watch Celtic play.
Yeah, I read something during the week, Paul, and it was what you were saying about, how was it, Takari, is it, you see it? The actual reason that we didn't sign him was because we kind of prioritised other signings.
Yes,
and just by the time we were ready to make a movie, they already decided to go to Schalke. But I don't think it was anything like he snubbed us or we snubbed him. I think it was just the timing of the deals.
It was kind of both ways, Mark, really. It was kind of both ways.
You name in the chat there, Paul, ex-Scotland manager Craig Brown. Don't think Craig's been in here before. Welcome aboard, Craig. Thanks for coming in, bud.
Hopefully not. No,
it's not going to get that, Craig Brown.
No, he's not. No, Mark. No, this fella. I stated on the podcast, Mark, that the only reason this fella is not getting into the Man City team at the moment is because Pep Guardiola isn't the manager, Mark, who promotes youth. If you look down his years at Man City, Mark, the only player that has made it through from his youth system is Phil Foden. And that has the only player that he brought through the ranks of Man City.
That's scandalous, Paul, when you think about it.
Yeah, and it is, Mark.
See if you were the owner of Man City, Paul, and you're pumping millions upon millions of pounds into this club. And I mean, I've spoke about it, Paul, before. It's like the full area around about. They've revitalised the full area. I know without getting into the politics, but for what they've done for that bit of Manchester's unbelievable, Paul. They've backed it's a totally different place for it looked like before they bought the club. But if you're pumping that kind of money into this club,
and you can't produce players,
you're expecting to have one of the best youth systems in the world. And so see when they're coming in and they're, I want to sign this guy for 120 million and him for 90 million. And well, why is nobody saying, well, why are we pumping millions into this youth system and we're getting nothing out of it? It was well just getting rid of the youth system. Is it's like mine Chelsea. Chelsea had what, 42 youth players. No, all youth players, but 42 players out on loan one season.
Yeah, and they had the only time where Chelsea actually had youth systems in charge in their team was when Lampard was in charge. He was the only one that really ever gave them a chance, but that's when they were on a transfer embargo. Remember that for January they were on a transfer.
Aye.
He had no reason, but like Pep Guardiola, Mark, throughout his career, never had time for youth players. Never gave players a chance, and you're mad as a young lad to go to these big clubs, Mark, because you're never going to break in there. You're especially when you have managers like that, Mark, who can buy a player who's made.
You still can't blame your young boy for doing that, but Paul.
Oh yeah, without doubt.
I mean, it's like you could spend if you're 16, right, and you're good enough to get into the Man City academy and stuff like that. See, no matter whether you kick a ball for them, Paul. By the time you're 19 or 20, you're coming out. You've been working with some of the best coaches in the world. You've got a right good few quid in your pocket, and you'll be good enough to still make a living out of playing football. Do you know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying, Mark. They get their training there, but then it comes a time when they're looking like Itakura. He's looking now, Mark, saying it's true what you said, Mark. He got a taste of first team football.
He's 23 or 24 now, isn't he?
24.
I mean, it's a bit like Carter Vickers, Paul.
He should be playing, yeah, exactly.
These players are getting passed about like an old Todd mag with these big clubs about down in England and that. And
I think
there's changes getting planned for that as well.
I think he was a marketing signing for Manchester City, I say.
You think so? It was just done for the Japanese market?
Yeah, rough stuff, because he's a Japanese international. He's been a Japanese international mark since he was 20.
I was saying that. I didn't read the article or that. I just kind of saw a headline that they're planning to bring changes into the amount of players that they're allowed to put out on loan now. And that's really they should, because if you're putting 42 players out on loan one season, Paul, and the next season there's not one of them come back good enough to get into your first team, what's the point of having 42 players even on your books?
There's another player, Mark, it was mentioned there on by Bobby. I wrote about him as well on the podcast, on the forum, Mark. You probably saw it. Taylor Harewood. Taylor Harewood of Man City is a left back. I can't see him coming to the Celtic, Mark, if I'm looking at that, because when I looked into, Mark, the likes of Fulham, Crystal Palace, and kind of lower teams down the bottom, Mark, are actually interested in this lad. He was on loan at Stoke City last season. They're back in for him this season, so I don't think Celtic will be.
Well, again, Paul,
for him.
What age is he?
He's 20. Don't think. No, I don't. I just.
At 20, he's not going to come in. You know, at 20-year-old, you need to be exceptional, Paul, to displace even Greg Taylor.
Yeah, I think, Mark, he there's too many offers him down south, Mark, for him to move up north.
I mean, I see if he was, as I say, saying there, see if he was like an exceptional player and he was going to be coming in and being in the first team squad. We're talking, well, he's not going to play in the Champions League signing with Fulham or Crystal Palace or anything like that, is he?
Exactly.
But coming in at 20, but we're still expecting like a new first choice left back to come in. Greg Taylor's going to be like our backup left back, so where's a 20-year-old left back going to get any kind of game time?
Exactly. Like, we have been linked with some fella, Mark, from I don't know where he was from, Mark. Do you see that fella? Is it Jesus or something we were linked? But that seems to be kind of a dead rubber thing just put out by the papers. But the interesting thing, Mark, about Celtic is that we're not looking at one area that people are screaming about, and it's one area, Mark, that I said no, we actually don't need it. Celtic aren't looking at another goalkeeper. I think that's clear, Mark, that Celtic won't
I
look
don't
at
think.
the goalkeeper. Safely, Mark, what I said about Bain and Toby signing new contracts.
I think the only way that it would,
If Bain left,
if Bain left, I think that, and then again, does that put Toby up to number 2 and we're looking for just like an old guy to fill
Exactly.
that third keeper role kind of thing, do you know what I mean? Or do we bring in a half team? Because people are talking about Segrist, right? We've had Jonas on here, Paul. Segrist isn't going to come and sit on Celtic's bench. He's not going to go and sit on anybody's bench unless, I mean, they're talking about Man U and that, aren't. I don't know how much truth's in that, Paul, but that's different because if you're going to Man United,
you're going to get games, Mark, anyway.
Plus, it's money. The money they'd be getting, it's kind of life-changing money, Paul. Do you know what I mean? But at his age, he'll be at that age when we're talking about Beaton, maybe want to be playing every week. Segrist is at Dundee United, he was playing every week. Unless it's going to be a life-changing money offer, he's going to go to a team that he's going to be playing every week for them, no doubt about that.
And it's like, Mark,
he's too good to sit in Celtic's bench.
I was reading there, Mark, I was reading about Fraser Foster, who recently signed for Tottenham Hotspur, right? As a backup to Hugh Lloris.
Is that who he said? I didn't know that, Paul.
Tottenham Hotspur, Mark, 2-year contract as a backup. Yeah, 2 years.
I mean, that Fraser Foster's best days were at Celtic. And I think, see, once he retires and looks back on things, I think he'll regret turning his down that summer that when...
Definitely.
What was that, 2 years ago now? I can't, but I think he'll regret that. I mean...
He's not going to dislodge Hugo Lloris, Mark. French international captain, Tottenham captain. But, Mark, I was looking like some goalkeepers, Mark.
I don't really rate that Lloris right enough, Paul. But Foster's still not going to take over for him doing it at Spurs. No chance.
A lot of Spurs fans, Mark, are dedicated to Lloris. I have a few good friends who know that, Mark, who were Spurs fans, and they love Lloris. I mean, no matter what mistakes he makes, Mark, they love Lloris. You know, he's just a cult. There's a player, Mark.
He's a cult figure.
Yeah, exactly.
Bobby, I agree, Mark, but could a season or two under Joe Harton also be beneficial for him with a view to being number... Who are you talking about, Bobby? I don't know who you're meaning there, bud.
Segrist he's talking about Segrist, I think, Mark. The only goalkeeper...
But he's not going to come in and sit for a season or two seasons.
The only goalkeeper, Mark, that's going to benefit working under Joe Hart for a year or two is young Toby. And that's the simple fact. You know, I'm not going to go into Toby too detailed, Mark, but...
We'll just start going on Paul's Toby. That's what we'll start calling him.
It's the logic situation, Mark, why Celtic aren't looking at a goalkeeper is because we have...
Let's face it, Paul, we've still got Barkas in the books as well.
I'll talk about him in a few minutes, Mark, there, because a few interesting things have popped up with him as well this week. Like, you're looking at Bain, Mark, right? Bain's at this stage of his career now, Mark, and I think, Mark, and a lot of goalkeepers are like this, they're happy to be number 2. And I think Bain is actually happy at Celtic being number 2.
It looks like it to me, otherwise why would have signed a contract extension just a few months ago?
Exactly. You look at Argentina, Mark, international.
Strange, but go to question why.
Do you remember the lad for United, Mark, the fellow Romero?
Aye.
He was number 2 at every single club he was at, Mark, and he was Argentina international goalkeeper. He was never a number 1 international club. So some goalkeepers, Mark, are just happy to be called upon, and to be honest, Mark, out of the 2 lads, Hazard and Barkas, Bain is the better goalkeeper. Do you know what I mean?
Aye, I'd agree with you on that. Aye, I mean, I said it before, Paul. I still think Barkas will go somewhere and come good again. He'll probably. I said it at the time, Paul, last season when we were saying we get shot at him and stuff like that. Even he'll come back and bite us in the bum one day in some European game. I'm convinced of it.
Well, there's been rumours, right, about Barkas that 2 Greek teams. I know one of them's Panathinaikos, and is it AOK Panathinaikos, Mark, aren't they? Yeah, Panathinaikos.
AEK Athens.
AOK Athens. Both those teams are interested in him, right? But there was rumours that Celtic were going to cancel his contract by mutual consent, Mark, and I just can't see Celtic rip up a contract, Mark, worth €5 million for a player. Can you?
Don't know, Paul.
Are we desperate to get rid of him?
What did we get for big Raphael shite back in the day and beat players like that? I mean,
Yeah, but we're looking
you
now,
rip up
Mark.
you rip up the contract. How long's he got left in his deal, Paul? 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
3 years. What do you think he's on, just for talking's sake, 18, 20 grand a week?
Barkas is on 25, Mark.
25,
26. He's one of our top honours.
2.5 million a year. That's £7.5 million it's going to cost us if he stays here for 3 years to see his contract out. So why not say to him here, you have £2 million, go and find yourself a new club. Well, just call it quits and go and find yourself a new club or whatever. I wouldn't be surprised to see him getting a free. I mean, there's people on the forum and that talking about like Rogic and Beaton and that, but these guys, it's
They
just
gave their service, Mark, to the club. They're different.
but it all comes down to money, Paul. I mean, it really does, and I think maybe the one of the reasons at Celtic maybe be looking for a fee, Paul, is because we still owe like a percentage of the fee to his Greek team.
Exactly.
So maybe they'll be like Celtic will be like, oh no, we still owe 1.2 million for you. We want that covered before we're letting you go anywhere, or that kind of thing.
But was it AK Athens we signed him from, Mark? Was it?
Barkas,
I think it was. I think it was Athens, Mark. That I remember they were kind of looking at a loan deal there, Mark, kind of recently for him. You know?
it was AEK Athens we got him for, Paul, aye.
You know, but like clearly, like I think everyone sees it, Mark, that he has no career at the club.
No, he's got no future whatsoever at Celtic, Paul.
You know, and what I was reading about these two teams actually being interested, Mark, another journalist came out and said that it was actually a local Greek journalist that put this out to the Panathinaikos papers, and he put it out to the Athens papers. So at the moment, there's been no contact for Barkas. It's still only early days. I expect him to leave, and I think he wants to leave, and I think the club want rid of him. So I really do think he was gone. But a list of players, Mark, were released by Celtic on June the 1st. Bison Rogic, as we know, Luke O'Connell, Ryan Mullen.
Got to with that, Paul. Got to about that, Luke O'Connell.
Talk about him, yeah, we talk about him. Carl McEnroy, 21. Ross Doohan, my man from Tranmere. But Mark, I expected that Tranmere wanted to sign him anyway. So if he wasn't released, that he was going back down to Tranmere Rovers anyway. I said that. Barry Coffrey, Mark, who is actually signing for Cork City permanently here in Ireland. He's signed for Cork City. And Mark, the lad's a star down here. Why wouldn't he want to just rebuild his career at Cork City? I said it months ago, Mark, when he signed for us like that. This fella is a step above the League of Ireland that he's playing in at the moment. You know, he's a step above what we're seeing down here. Young Dembele, Mark, is actually a free agent from the 30th of June. All right? And Bobby Patterson, left back, is a thing. Owen Henderson, Mark, is expected to leave. He's at Aberdeen. He was on loan at Aberdeen last season. They still have an option to buy the player, but that expires on the 30th of June. Liam Scales is actually on Aberdeen's radar. Jim Goodwin thinks his fellow Irishman would be a good fit. He's looking to loan him with an option to buy at the end of the season. Clearly, Ange wants to clear up players, Mark, and make space for the things. But as you said there, one player, Mark, that disappoints me is Luke O'Connell, signed from Bolton Wanderers. Tried to make his way into the Celtic squad numerous of times. He was blocked on numerous of times by Neil Lennon. Neil Lennon was slated by his agent.
His agent Lennon had a kind of bust up, didn't he?
Slated by Ireland under 21's manager, Mark. Can't even get in to the Ireland 21 squad now, Mark. For one player, Mark, and one young lad that I thought had it when we signed him, Mark, I was delighted we signed this lad because he was an upcoming Irish star. But we've talked about how bad Celtic were with the pathway, but this fella was treated badly at Celtic.
It certainly seems that way, Paul. I had big hopes for him as well, because obviously you were bigging him up, but it wasn't just sure. A lot of Irish lads and that was talking about him. I thought he was going to be I thought he was going to be a player for us. I really did. But
The reason, Mark, I think
he'll
he
end
was
up.
released,
He'll
Mark,
end up. Who is it? Who is it?
Scott Brown was after him.
That's who it was in that. Aye, but he'll end up. Luke O'Connell will end up going to a bigger level
I
than
think
that,
so,
Paul.
Mark.
Aye.
I think, Mark,
One of the ones that you'll look, but it's a bit like Andy Robertson kind
come
of
back
thing.
and haunt us, man.
But Andy Robertson wasn't that good. Andy Robertson wasn't that good a young player.
No.
He just worked hard. Do you get what I mean? If Andy Robertson was playing like what he's playing now, but back then, there no way Celtic would have let him go even with KT in the team or that. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes it's best for young players to move on, to realise their potential or release it, whatever it is. But I look at Connell had.
He had it, Mark.
No, but he had a. No, I'm not saying it pedigree, but he was a good player already, kind of thing when we got him.
Because, like, Mark, he was in Bolton's youth system when Lennon was manager. So Lennon knew about this lad, and it was Lennon who signed him. And then he was just left to rot. Clearly good enough, Mark, to even come into the first team squad.
But it wouldn't have been Lennon Paul that signed him.
No, he came in during Lennon's time.
Aye, but it's still, if
but that's
anyway,
saying,
Neil
like,
Lennon was picking up a 16-year-old. Do you know what I mean?
I'm saying that Lennon knew about him. Do you get me?
You'd have known about him. Aye.
Do you know, because he was at Bolton.
Lennon's never had any interest in youth players.
No, and it's a shame, Mark, because if you look at now, I think if Luke O'Connell came to the club now, Mark, it would have been a different situation. I think so much, Mark, has happened now between his agents, Ireland manager coming out criticising Celtic. He said himself he wants to play. I think both of them actually agreed that he be released. He still had a year.
And the thing about that as well is, Paul, all these young Irish lads talk to each other and that.
Mm-hmm.
But the next young guy, 16, 17, or Celtic's trying to sign me and that. Look at Connell, part of that kind of wee group of young Irish players. He's got to say, stay clear of me, it's a nightmare.
This could actually damage. Like, we're looking at a player now, like a young lad who will come into the first team. But we say if young Christopher Scott was 16, Mark 17, and he saw all these young players cribbing about Celtic youth system that they didn't get pathways, you wouldn't come to Celtic, Mark, would you? You know,
it would put you off. But I think probably when you're talking about like that kind of level, Paul, this boy for Bayern Munich, you've maybe done what. See now that Ange is in place and other people in place. Maybe now we've done what Bayern Munich done to us with the young players, and we've put this package to him.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's not. But you can't just turn around and write off your youth system. No. Because of like one or two things that go kind of wrong, but you can't say it's brilliant just because one or two things go right. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Celtic's something that really needs to be improved on at Celtic, I think.
This, Mark, is the prime example, Mark, of the failures in the youth system over the years. Do you know what I mean? It really, and of all the young players, Mark, that pissed me off, like, because I'm always going crazy, Mark, that when I see a young player leave, Mark, that we haven't seen him breaking into the first team, like, we can't make no judgment on. But I've seen this young lad, Mark, on the 21s level for Ireland, and I know what this lad is about, and it just hurts, Mark, that he's left Celtic without even getting a sniff into first team. Like, never even got a sniff, Mark. Do you know what I mean? Never.
No.
You know, he was loaned out before. Practically, he actually asked for that move, Mark, last season before Ange came in, so that was agreed. He actually didn't want to stay there at Celtic, Mark, for another season, and he could have trained with Ange. Maybe, Mark, he could have been playing playing the Codes League, Mark, or Ange would have saw him a bit more, but he didn't want that, Mark. He just wanted out of Celtic, you know. And it's a bad reflection on Celtic, Mark, when a young player actually doesn't want. Like, we promote ourselves, Mark, on
things like that. That's what I'm saying, Paul. That's kind of, you're no one to. There's always going to be isolated incidents and stuff. There'll be things going on behind the scenes. Maybe the young lads are too much into their women and drinking or whatever, no towing the line and things like that. But you don't want to gain that kind of reputation.
No.
Do you know what I mean? There's always going to be players that will fall out and get a wee bit of an ego and think they're better and should be playing here. So they want.
I constantly said that when we signed him, that he'd learned a lot from Scott Brown, that he could be a Scott Brown replacement defensive midfield. That's his role. And look at the person who wants to sign him, Mark. Scott Brown. So Scott Brown obviously sees...
Obviously rates him.
Exactly. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't think Scott Brown, Mark, is going to put faith in a young lad if he wants to make an impression as his first managerial career. Do you get me?
No.
So I think it could...
Strangelove, the doctor, back in the night. Paul, not seen him for a while, have we?
So
Thanks for joining us, bud.
Players that come into Celtic have state-of-the-art access to nutrition, coaching facilities, education advice, not to mention the platform itself. It's down to them to seize the opportunity. Yeah, I agree with that, but when they're not given the opportunity, then, Mark, what we were saying that, like, he was at Celtic at the wrong time, I think, Mark, when I think nutrition was out the door with Neil Lennon, wasn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Aye. You could see even, Paul, you could see that even watching the team. I mean,
like
it's like we've spoke about it. I mean, we're not wanting to turn...
Was with like even Tom Roderick, Mark, looked overweight when Neil Lennon was at the club. Beeson, Mark, was a totally different player last season. So
I mean, we're not wanting to turn it into another Neil Lennon bashing season, Paul, but things like sports science, even we spoke about it, where you kind of shunned what Gavin, I was ready to say Gordon Strachan, what Gavin Strachan was saying to him, and that it was just Neil Lennon. It was a kind of, he was like an old school manager before his time, wasn't he, kind of thing? He seemed to just, I think Neil Lennon based his kind of managerial style, if you want to call it that, on like Martin O'Neill. But that was, I mean, that's 20 years ago, Paul. That was you could be like that. Plus, Martin O'Neill had a lot more knowledge about the game than Lennon. Do you know what I mean? When Martin O'Neill spoke, he knew what he was speaking about, kind of thing.
From the players that released, Mark, we're still expecting Barkas. I think Balangoli's definitely gone, Mark. Who else was there? Ayesi.
Soro. I see Lennon's meant to be looking at Soro.
Soro, yeah, in team. It's just strange then, Mark, that Lennon's looking at Soro and the way he chuffed him out last season. Then when Scott Brown got fit, like, do you know what I mean?
I mean, Soro, I think as well.
He lost his way, Mark.
Aye, I think when he did get on the park, Paul, he just seemed a lot of the time. I think he was trying too hard to impress. See what you're saying about if Luke O'Connell had come into the club now.
Yeah.
Or last summer under Ange. I think that would have been the same way.
Aye. To get into a tackle and
I think maybe if Soro had come in under Ange, he would have had a better kind of better coaching, better I don't know, temperament. Because for me that's what it was. He just went in running about like a headless chicken.
He did, yeah. Near the end.
It was as if he was trying too hard, and then he would pick up bookings, and that would be him kind of having to walk that kind of tightrope for the rest of the game all the time.
And he did, Mark. There was some games there, like Christ, he was still going into tackles that you take him off.
McGregor's the same for me, Paul. I mean, I don't know how the stats would even back it up, but I've said it to you. I've said it on the podcast. I've said it in the forum. For me, that's why I don't like McGregor playing in that kind of defensive role, Paul, because he can't tackle.
Well,
he spends a lot of time in games, Paul, as well, walking that yellow card tightrope.
I was watching the Scotland and Ukraine game there the other night, Mark, and I texted you. I said, like, he did make one good tackle, Mark, when he came back there near the end. He got back and he got the ball out for a corner. But that game was a prime example, Mark, why Celtic need a proper defensive midfielder in. Because they was walked through him.
I mean, that's against Ukraine playing in the national team, Paul, but we're getting into the Champions League next season.
Exactly, Mark. He's not going to be strong enough for that.
No chance in hell can Celtic get into the Champions League with McGregor doing that job.
We'd be too wide open, Mark. I mean, because McGregor will push up, Mark. McGregor won't sit there. Do you get me? He's not that type of player, Mark, that will actually sit back.
No.
The player that we're actually screaming for. I'm looking at Mark, and I think a lot of people have written him off last season, and rightly so. But I think, Mark, with a good pre-season under Ange, that we actually could see a lot more of James McCarthy next season. I think it's because, Mark, he came into Celtic and last season he'd no pre-season. He got hit with COVID, then he got hit for an injury. He was never really that fit, but I think under a good pre-season, a proper rest over the summer, back to pre-season, Mark,
It's a bit.
could see
It's a bit like Gucci. It's a bit like Gucci as well. But Paul, we read the other week. It was just they couldn't get in the team. When the team's winning and doing well, the manager's not looking to change the team.
Yeah.
I mean, people going, "Oh, McCarthy, it was Dermot Desmond that signed him. It was this, it was that." It wasn't.
Mark,
and spoke to James McCarthy.
The best thing is, Mark, said, remember Anne said he lives and breathes football.
Aye.
And if he didn't know who James McCarthy is, Mark, he'd want to go back to his books, because I think practically every football manager, Mark, would know James McCarthy, an Irish international, played at the highest level in England, and knew who James McCarthy was, Mark, and what James McCarthy was about. Do you get me?
I mean, I'm not saying that Dermot Desmond and that didn't have anything to do with it, but it was Angie's decision to sign him.
Mm-hmm.
Dermot Desmond gave him the opportunity that you want to sign McCarthy. You want obviously, but Ange said and spoke to James McCarthy on numerous occasions before he actually did sign. So just said, I mean, I don't think as a Celtic fan didn't want that to work out for McCarthy. Do you know what I mean?
I think, Mark, next season I hope and remark that we do see Gucci get a run and what he can do. You know, is he the player that we're missing to step back? Is this lad from Israel that we're supposed to be looking at, Mark? Is that the player that Ange wants? But whoever it is, Mark, we do need a proper defensive midfielder in that role. That's the simple fact of it.
Definitely, in my opinion, Paul, 100%.
You know,
some of the, it's just, even doing it again, Paul, just to have that kind of physical presence in midfield.
I mean, it could be that answer, Mark. Is he going to get promoted up? Is he that answer? We don't know.
But I mean, it doesn't actually need to be this kind of like out and out defensive midfielder, Paul. We just need a bit of physicality throughout the midfield.
Exactly.
A bit of steel. It could be some, you know, I mean, it could be an attacking midfielder, but if they get that kind of attack, that kind of defensive mind, and they're good in attack on that.
If you look at the four Japanese players, Mark, Gucci's the most bulked of them. So he's bulked up, Mark, for a specific reason. Is to play that role. Do you get me? Your defensive midfielder is always strong and tough, like a Scott Brown, Mark. Wasn't the biggest, but physicality-wise, he was. Do you get me? You know?
Aye. Strangelove, the doctor saying, I'd like to see an outright gun like in ice hockey. I'm sick of watching our ballers get smashed by farmers. We should hire a pro to sort them out. That's what I'm saying. Just it doesn't need to be an out-and-out defensive midfielder. We just need one or two players that are going to add a bit of steel into the full team.
Exactly.
Because apart from we're like defensive line, Paul, the rest of them are kind of, well, Big Gio Kamakis can throw his weight about a bit.
No,
but the rest of the team is really, really lightweight when you look at them.
Very lightweight, Mark. And this has been, I think, the lightest team, Mark, I've seen Celtic in a long, long time. We always had one or two players, Mark, that were able to hold their own. Do you know what I mean? The one player who seems to be holding his own, Mark, and gets involved with everything is Greg Taylor. Greg Taylor, I said. You know?
Aye. We Taylor, he's got a bit of dig about him and Disney back down for any kind of challenge, a bit of roughhouse and all that, but we just need that kind of, even in the games against Old Firm FC and that, Paul. Many times did we sit here and going about getting out muscled in the midfield.
Exactly. Like, Mark, if nearly a 40-year-old Stephen Davis can run the midfield.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? It's embarrassing, Mark, isn't it?
Guys really like Ryan Jack and that.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. From the list that released, Mark, and the players we named out, are you expecting anyone else to go? What's your thoughts on Mickey Johnson, Mark? Are you expecting him to go?
I don't expect. I know everybody keeps saying that he should be away and get rid of him and things like that, but I think he'll still be at Celtic next season.
I think a loan, Mark, could benefit him.
I would agree with that. I think a loan would benefit him.
Because he needs a season, Mark, where he can play and not get injured. See, the problem with Celtic, Mark, and he's picking up injuries is because he's coming into the Celtic team for 1 or 2 games. Then he's picking up these injuries because he's not playing week in and week out, maybe. So maybe...
It might be.
Do you know, maybe
even his confidence as well. But Paul, I'd like to see him getting blown and
And he was
build up.
another player, Mark, that was trying too hard.
Aye, he seemed to be trying too hard.
Yeah.
I suppose when he was getting a lot of stick off the fan side, that's why he was playing that kind of way. But I don't, see, to be honest, Paul, I don't see why he takes the amount of stick that he does.
Well, Mark, I was impressed with him, Mark, when he stepped in there
but he's not really seen that much of him.
No, when I was impressed with him,
to get that level of hate, I don't think.
Because I think, Mark, the issue is what we just said. He was trying too hard. When the pass was on, he didn't take the pass. Do you get me? Because he wanted to get the goal.
He wanted the goal.
Do you know what I mean? He wanted the goal, and that was his biggest mistake, I think, Mark. That when
Brian asked me, Paul. I've not heard anything, Paul, the last couple of days, but
well, I did see it looked nasty.
Even a kind of minimum is it prognosis, is that the word? It'll be like 4 to 6 weeks out into it, even if it's just like a kind of
we're going
slight injury.
At the moment, Mark, well, we could be going into the start of the season
with Welch and Julian.
With Welch and Julian. You know, with Welch, because we're not going to talk about it, we still don't know the situation with Vickers, Mark, but maybe this Man City fan will come a bit. We definitely, Mark, whoever it is, Mark, we definitely do need another centre back within the squad, because Julian is gone. I think he's gone. I can't see a way back.
Julian will be away this summer without a doubt.
Coming out in the media, Mark, I don't think Ange is that type of manager, Mark, that's going to have his players mouthing off to the media, not getting game time.
No. See, if he hadn't signed his exit warrant before then, he definitely done it with that interview, Paul.
You know,
says, I don't think Ange.
No, and I think
don't wash your dirty linen in public, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Mark, at the celebrations, Julian just didn't seem interested.
No.
Was he getting involved? Or maybe they're pissed off.
But it's even at that, Paul. You've not played it. See if he'd been in the middle of it or jumping about like an idiot in that, Paul, he'd have took pelters for that.
Yeah.
It'd have been a bit John Terry-ish, wouldn't it? When, do you know what I mean? Just you've not kicked a ball all season and now you're running about as if you've been the hero of the squad kind of thing. So I don't think he could really have won that day, Paul.
No, it was. He
felt himself. I've not done enough to want being part of like the main celebrations. I'll just take a wee step and stay in the background. But I don't think Julian will play for us again. No. I think he'll be away this summer.
And there's a few clubs, Mark, as well in France that seem to be looking at him. You know,
do we get a fee for him?
Well, he still has a year.
A year to go, aye.
A year to go on his contract, Mark. So I see why not. I think we have to sell him, Mark, or give him another contract.
Well, that's basically it. It's twist or stick with him this summer.
He'd be able to sign for a foreign club in January then, Mark, wouldn't he? But nothing. You know.
But I mean, we paid 7 million for him, wasn't it?
Yeah, big sign at the time, Mark. Yeah, big money.
I don't think we'll get that from now, but if we can get, I don't know, between 3, maybe 4 million for him.
Definitely. I don't think, Mark, there's no one else. You know, I don't think there's no player at Celtic at the moment that I would like to see sold. You know, because I think going by last season, every player deserves to be in the squad next season. You know.
But there's no. Apart from the ones we've listed there, I don't think there's anybody else I would say I'd like to see out the way. So there will be bids, Paul.
Definitely.
You get what I mean? There will be bids for players that we've got, but hopefully we can kind of resist them.
I think, Mark, that's going to be the biggest task of the transfer window is keeping this core of players together. You know.
Aye.
You know.
I don't think so. Ange would even actively let them sell any star men from under his feet, Paul.
Interest there from Dr. Strangelove. We need 4 first-team centre-backs, Starflight plus Icor, like we just said, Mark. Cameron Vickers, if he signs. Welch, right centre-back. Supported by young Dan Murray. I have great time for that young lad, Mark. I think he could actually make an impression next season as well, Mark. He could be brought into the squad next season, young Dan Murray, because he came in the Champions League qualifiers, Mark, and stepped in there like.
Didn't he look out of place at all, didn't he?
Like, why? Like, we've spoke about this situation before, Mark. Like, why do we want to keep Julian when we have young players like young Dane Murray? There's Bosman Law who can play there as well, Mark.
Even
Who for me,
Welsh, you know what I
Welsh
mean?
exactly. Who and he's going to block them getting on the benchmark or
But
even
that's what I've said. I've
yeah,
said
for
that, Paul,
years.
for
Yeah,
months. It's no. See, Julian, when I said it when he was just starting to get fit again, Paul, it wasn't Carter Vickers or
no, it
Starfelt
was
that he was.
Welsh.
It was
Yeah,
Welsh. He should have been trying to displace
yeah,
to become that,
definitely.
but to become the number one backup, and then you kind of look for your chance to get into the team. But I think Julian just thought that once he was fit, he should just walk straight back into the team.
Mm-hmm.
And well, people raved and raved about Julian, but I was never that convinced with
No,
him,
Mark,
Paul. To be
Julian.
honest.
Starfelt got pelters, Mark, at the start of the season for being lightweight, and people were screaming for Jude to come back. I've seen Julian struggle week in and week out
I
with the
know.
physicality of the thing Dr. Stoyanov. He's been with the club 3 years, Mark, and he's made less than 50 full appearances for the club. You know, so
I mean,
why
it
would
just
we have
seems.
to
I
keep
seem
him?
to think back at it, Paul. He just always seems to have been out the team with injuries, didn't he? I know that was a bad one that he picked up, but still, I mean, that's a terrible
Bobby's
start.
going on about Bosman Law, Mark. He can play centre back and he can play centre midfielder. The interesting thing about Bosman Law, Mark, I was raging delighted when we signed him, Mark, because I thought this like for Celtic to get this lad was just unbelievable, considering the teams that were after him from Watford. Uh,
Aye.
at the time, Watford were in the Premier League when we actually took him from
We
Watford.
actually thought that we were signing him for a first team place, didn't we?
Yeah,
Because of
yeah,
that fact, we're not going to
yeah.
leave. We thought he wouldn't leave Watford to go and spend another year
You
like
know,
in reserves or
he
well, our B team as we call it.
his preferred position, and I know he played a lot of times as centre back for the Colts team. But his preferred position, Mac, and he plays it for the Irish under 21s, is defensive midfielder. That's
Aye.
his preferred position because he's fast and he can run and he likes to hold up the ball. He likes to be the one, Mac, who puts in the tackle. That's what I'm saying. Could we actually see him coming into this role of Beaton next season? But I think it could be a little bit early for him to be there as a full season, but to come
Aye.
in and
Part
get
of the
games, Mac,
squad.
exactly. For him to
Ah,
get games, Mac, and feed him.
you're not
Yeah.
going to play him in that position in your Champions League games and
Mhm.
things like that. But well, Paul, we speak about it all the time. That's one of the things about these giving these young players a
To
pathway.
breed him
It's
in, Mark, yeah.
letting them play in games that you know that it's like the kind of level that you know they can play at. Do you know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Because I've no doubts, Mark, that he'd come in, Mark, and he'd be able to handle games in the Scottish League. I've
The
no doubts
majority,
about
aye,
that. Do you know what I mean? Because if you're playing under 21s level, Mark, in international football, you're coming up against players, Mark, who are at the same calibre of most of the Scottish football teams anyway. Do you get me? You know,
aye.
you're playing against Spain, you're playing against Italy. These are all upcoming stars in their own right, in their own clubs. Do you get
They're,
me?
they're probably better than the majority
Exactly.
of players in
Exactly.
Scotland. I know.
hmm You know, so I think Mark's that he will be around the first team squad next season, but I think it could be maybe a year early for him. Do you get me? You
Aye,
know,
to become like a mainstay of the
exactly.
team, a first
Yeah,
first choice here or something like that.
yeah, definitely, definitely. So as we know, Celtic have appointed Mark Lawwell as our head of scouts and recruitment. Mark spent 10 years with Man City Group in a similar role, gathering intelligence on players. He's great contacts around the globe and he's great knowledge of players around the globe. He's also worked with Celtic manager Ange Postecoglou at Yokohama Miners and said at the time he was delighted that Celtic have appointed Mark as he has worked in for the past 4 or 5 years at Yokohama. A lot of people at the time said, "Oh, we're not bringing in Peter Law's son to the club," but he wouldn't have come to the club, Mark, if Peter Law was there.
Don't think
Uh,
so.
I think from what I read, Mark, like it didn't kind of give no start date for him, but from what I read, is that he'd be at the club when transfer business opens. So I presume he's at the club now, Mark, in some capacity, if not full time at the moment.
It's like the 31st of May and the 1st of June, Paul. That's the dates that makes football stuff works to. So I said in the forum, I thought, well, there a chance that he took her on the 1st of June, like officially, but he's probably just been winding up his job at Man City.
Exactly.
Starting to do some work for Celtic over the last few months, it's been announced kind of thing. As I said, Paul, I think it's, see if his name wasn't Mark Lawwell, and it was somebody else for Man City at that level, and we
this is a big loss to Man City.
Oh, definitely,
not just
Paul.
Man City, but the Man City group.
The City football group. I mean, he's had that job, Paul, for 10 years.
He was running Mark. He was running, like we're on about how Man City brought in these great players, Mark, and stuff like this. He was head of the recruitment, Mark. He was getting this information on these players by his scouts, Mark. And who knows, Mark, he could actually attract more scouts from this Man City group to come to Celtic who've spotted these players. Do you know?
Not just for Man City, Paul, but he'll know scouts for all over the world.
Exactly.
He could say, oh, I know so-and-so for, I don't know, somewhere in Eastern Europe, and we'll bring him in. It'll not cost as much. He only worked for some wee team over there. Do you know what I mean? He knows all these scouts for the world as well. So I said, Paul, I just think it's a great coup for Celtic to get somebody that calibre in.
This Japanese player for Schalke that was supposed to be interested, Itakura. That's why I think that there's legs to this story, is because of Mark Lawwell involvement at Man City. That's why I think there's legs to it, and why it could happen.
Aye.
You know, like what do you expect, Mark? What can, just looking at him, Mark, what you know, but what are you hoping he brings to the club? Like, we know Mark Lafave was looking after the scouting at the scouting department, but that was only temporary. It was always temporary. That was said it was temporary because of the fella Hamid left, Mark, and Price left. He stepped into that role on a temporary basis. So we always needed someone, the head of the recruitment. So are you expecting big changes there from what he learned?
Oh, definitely, Paul. A million %. It's just, as I said, Paul, if you're taking somebody from Man City to come and do that job for you, they're at the top of their game. The contacts you'll have over the world, I mean, he'll know players for every corner of the globe. He'll know scouts, he'll know coaches, he'll know everything about. But because to do that job at that kind of level, Paul, you're talking about one of the richest clubs in the world. Mark Lawwell could probably have got a job for any of your big clubs in the world. Even down to your Real Madrids and things like that. I mean, that's a level. That's who Man City are competing with, Paul. You're competing against your Real Madrid, your Barças, your Bayern Munich. So for Mark Lawwell to do that job for a club like Man City for 10 years shows you the calibre of it.
It's not just that, Mark, we're still actually looking for the first team data analysis. So he could actually be, being in this role, Mark, he could be the one who's actually going to be looking for that right person, maybe that he knows could be that person for that job. Being something more, maybe there has been people on Celtic's list already, but he could come on, Mark, no, this fella here, this fella's the best at that. It's not just players what he could attract, Mark, it's the person.
You'd like to think that Celtic are tapping into his knowledge on everything. You'd like to think, Paul, when it comes to things like that, the decisions are coming down to guys like Mark Lawwell and Ange getting together and talking things through and sorting things out and that, and then they take it. Then you kind of get the money men involved in it to see if it's possible.
Exactly, and before he actually signed Mark for Celtic, right? Celtic always said that they were looking at the scouting department, and at the time I was reading up on Jay Harv, and they said that he was actually in this role in a temporary basis, and that when someone was appointed, he will move up to a more senior role within the club. And when I looked into his history, Mark, he was more involved at Arsenal under Uni Emery and what's his name, Arteta. And when he was at Brighton, Mark, he looked after more of the football operations side of the club. I think, Mark, instead of maybe appointing a director of football, we could actually have a head of football operations, and it could be Jota have in that position.
Aye, but it's just the job titles and that,
Yeah,
isn't it, Paul?
switch it
But that's
over, Mark, yeah,
that's aye.
They always said, Mark,
I was actually thinking, Paul, because
because I noticed you put that up in the forum when we signed Mark Lawn. That's the next step. Maybe was a director of football or someone in that capacity, Mark, in that role. And I just thought of it. I didn't want to post this on the forum that day, but I think, Mark, that we actually could see him maybe come maybe a football operations guy.
I mean, was that no Hammond's title, Paul?
He was in charge of the football operations.
That was his job title, wasn't it? I was actually thinking, Paul, because even though Lawwell's in charge of that's all I know, we're back to having a Lawwell to talk about, Paul. Happy days, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's like Mark Lawwell, even though he's this head of recruitment and scouting and that Celtic will still, we've still basically got a head scout, that guy you're talking about, that Le Havre, whatever it is. So we still need, we will still maybe need a head scout, so I don't know if he's just going to continue in that role.
No, they said that he'd be appointed to a more senior role within the club. Yeah, within the club. A more senior. If you go, it'll take you a few. I'll find it again.
I've been behind for 2 weeks nearly, Paul. I'm just kind of catching up on things.
This was actually months ago, Mark. When I did the podcast, when we talked about the backroom staff and people were saying who's looking after head of recruitment. That fucking Hamid is gone and the fella Penrice is gone. And I read up in Jota have and I read up in his history.
If you mention him to a lot of Celtic fans, Paul, they wouldn't even know who he was.
No, but at Arsenal and Brighton, Mark, he was scouting players at the time because that's football operations, Mark. You look at young players as well. You look at players as well. But he's more. It'd be like Ragnick at Manchester United, Mark. He was never a football manager. He was always a fella who built clubs. Do you get me?
Aye.
So I know, Mark. I think that I'm not saying it will happen, but maybe no. He hasn't left the club. Jota have, Jota have is his name, but he's the one, Mark, I think, who maybe can come into that role and more suited to that role that maybe you're suggesting.
It might be. I've said it for years, Paul, when you stuff like that to happen. And I said it on the forum the other day, Paul. Somebody says, I don't think we need a director of football, just let Ange go on with it. Pep doesn't need a director of football. Man City's got a director of football. All the big clubs have got...
It's too much, Mark. It's too much now for a manager modern-day football.
It's a changed game, Paul.
Everything, you know?
I mean, the days of guys like a guy like your Alex Ferguson, your Arsene Wenger, the days are long gone now.
Exactly.
And as I've said, Paul, I want Ange to be... I want him to be working with the first team squad and improving the product and the product on the park, rather than Ange having to deal with having to send scouts to go and look for players and set up diets and all. Then Ange's job isn't anything to do with the sports science stuff and that. Do you know what I mean? That's up to, as I said, somebody higher up the tree, a director of football or football operations or whatever you want to give the job title to. And that's what we need to get. A lot of fans need to get into their head. For Celtic to be we're meant to be one of the biggest clubs in the world, but when we think like that, and that's not a big club thinking, Paul. Because as I said on the forum, what happens if fans? What if he walks in and gets hit with a bus? What if he drops dead with a heart attack tomorrow? Touch wood, I don't know meaning anything like that.
But that's a simple example, Mark, of it. Yeah, exactly.
What would happen to Celtic then? Because we've got all our eggs in Ange's basket. I keep bringing it up, Paul. Look how many times Chelsea changed their manager.
Yeah, but the system stayed the same.
Everything else stays the same, and that's the kind of level that we've got to work towards.
Even though, Mark, when a manager's looking at a player, like the days of Arsene Wenger and Ferguson times are gone. Do you know what I mean? Player gets recommended. They watched a few videos of him. Do you know what I mean? They didn't have sports science back then, Mark. They didn't have all this data that's available.
No, sports science was keeping Roy Keane out the pub.
Yeah, and it's exactly. And now, Mark, to scout the player, Mark, it's not watching him for 1 or 2 matches. It's going deeper into the player's profile, looking at his stats, looking at his speed, his dribbles. I mean, all these that you hate and I like. You know what I mean? All
Aye,
these things, Mark, come into the scouting the player now. Do you get me?
aye,
You know?
it's a long drawn out process, Paul. Now when you like the scouting game, you say a player will be recommended, he'll catch a scout's eye, but then
Like,
a lot of work goes into
like,
whether they're suitable to come into the club.
like
Might be
I
an
didn't want
idiot.
to, I don't want to dwell him again, Mark, but when young Toby signed for us from Tottenham, his stats were shocking because he was such a raw talent. He was such a raw goalkeeper.
Sorry, Paul, Bobby Sutherland, Ange could be a good shout for a director of football in the
Definitely.
future. I said that months ago, didn't I, Paul? That would be he's 57 now.
Mhm.
Keep him as a manager for 3 or 4 years and then let him give him a chance to. Because even if he wanted to move somewhere a bit warmer or for his wife or whatever, even when his time as manager is up, he can still be a director of football. You don't need to be at Celtic Park or Lennoxtown every day to be a director of football.
Yeah, as I was saying, Mark, that when Toby signed from Spurs, and his stats they weren't good, but you could see there was talent there. You could see that you could train the player. Do you get me? And that's the scouting department, Mark, seeing potential in a player. I know if you look at his stats for Celtic, Mark, compared to the one 4 or 5 years ago, it's just night and day. Do you know what I mean? That's the whole of data coming into scouting now, that you see the potential, you see the progress that the player is making over the years. You know, Toby's not my son. I would find it very hard if Toby was my son, considering the different race. But another interesting thing, Mark, is that when Celtic signed Toby, we weren't actually looking at him. We were looking at his brother, Joshua, who's actually under 21's goalkeeper for Spurs. We were actually looking at him before we signed Barkas. Celtic were looking at his brother.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, we were actually looking at his brother Joshua. But Celtic wanted to buy him. Spurs didn't want him sold because they saw the potential in. He didn't want to come to Celtic on a loan deal. He wanted to stay, hence why his brother was recommended to Celtic as a prospect for the future. That's how Toby's signature came about. We were actually looking at his brother.
Is his brother still at Spurs?
Yes, he's been loaned out to I forget who he was loaned out. Some championship team, League One team last season. He's actually called up to the Nigerian squad now, Mark. He's his younger brother his older brother Joshua. You know, so his father was a goalkeeper, played for Nigeria in the 70s and 80s. But he wasn't the number one goalkeeper. He was in their books for Nigeria. So that's how he came about, Mark. Young Toby. We were looking at his brother. You know, so Barkas actually wasn't the first option for Celtic.
First option.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just shows you as well, but Paul, I mean, we've spoken about it plenty, about the amount of scouting that went into Barkas.
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
Just no work to
I
it
think
at
he
all,
was a
innit,
panic boy, Mark. I really do. I think he was a panic boy. At the time when Foster left, we were down the dumps. I know we scouted the Mark, but if we were looking at other goalkeepers and it didn't work out with Joshua and stuff like that, I say we made options to a lot of players that time, Mark, and it just didn't work out. And just fucking Barker's deal then, I don't think it was a first option. Definitely not. You know?
A lot of money, Paul, for kind of backup plan, but isn't it, really, when you...
Yeah, 5 million, Mark. But you could say the same, Mark. Like the most extraordinary transfer deal under Peter Law's era was Alvin Ayeti, who we had signed up for a loan deal first, Mark, and then it turns out we paid 5 million for him to sign him on a 4-year contract.
I know.
I'm surprised at that, Mark.
See, honestly, now what these people get interviews, that's one of the questions I would like to ask Peter Lowe. What happened? You get what I mean?
It was going down
Why
to
change your
Mark.
mind?
Yeah,
And
that's
I mean,
it.
Paul, it was basically in a matter of hours, wasn't it?
Yeah,
The loan deal was agreed and that, and then
agreed.
the next thing it started coming through that we were actually buying them.
Yeah, that's the war, and it's something, Mark,
The
that
dude, the Hanny's agent.
imagine it. I'll have to look into that.
I'm going to look. I'm going to
Wouldn't
look that up
surprise me,
now.
Mark. It didn't come up when I looked at the Israeli players that he had. He mostly has a lot of Israeli players, though, Mark, don't he? Yeah, so
Aye.
unless yes, he has some cousins or something in Israel, it wouldn't surprise me. But when you look at the way Peter Law does his dealings, Mark, like that was one of the strangest ones ever to come out of his.
Definitely. I mean, he had a few weird ones, didn't he? We mentioned earlier on that Colin Kazim Richards and things like that, but Yeti one sticks. It kind of sticks out in its own as a bit.
But that's the prime
Just
example,
because of the
Mark,
money even involved in it, isn't it?
that's the prime example, Mark, why Mark Law's appointment is huge for Celtic, is because you said it for years, I said it for years, I'm sure the lads in the form have been saying it for years. Having the right people make the right football choices for the club. Like at the time, Ronnie Dyla played one of the best football we've seen at Celtic, Mark, and we signed a striker who just wasn't suited to the way Ronnie Dyla played.
No.
Do you know what I mean? And that's why Law's appointment is brilliant, Mark, because he worked with Ange at Yokohama. He knows the type of manager that Ange is. So he's going to bring players, Mark, who he knows are suited to Ange's system. Do you know what I mean? So this appointment, Mark, like it's not a player's appointment, but for me, it's one of the best appointments Celtic have made in a long, long time at the club.
I totally agree with you, Paul. As I said, Mark Lawwell, for the level that he's been operating at for the last 10 years, Paul, it's one of the biggest, richest clubs in the world.
I just don't
It's
see,
just
Mark.
to get somebody like that to come and work for Celtic.
I just don't
Obviously,
see.
there's going to be financial constraints. You know what I mean?
Oh
He's not
yeah,
going
but he knows that, Mark.
exactly, he
when
knows
comes into
that.
the club, Mark. He knows, but he knows what Celtic is about, Mark. He
Because the thing is, Paul, it's like,
bring in these young players, Mark, and
Do you
then
think-
sell them on for a profit.
do you think Man City actually like really needed to go and scout like Erling Haaland and play? Do you get what I mean? Man
No,
City's
exactly.
buying players that you don't need to
Ready-made.
spend months scouting and stuff like
They
that.
buy players, Mark, that could come into the first team.
And that's what probably Mark Lawwell's been doing. He's been see these players we're talking about that have
And
been
I
filling
looked
up
at
the
it,
Man
Mark,
City reserves.
and
But he's watching these players that could be good enough to get into the Man City team, and a lot of the players that aren't good enough to get into the Man City team, Paul, will be damn good enough to get into the Celtic team.
Exactly. But I was actually thinking about Haaland's move to Man City, all right? And a lot of people have saying, "Oh, Jack Grealish was a waste of money." Jack Grealish is a runner. He's a runner with the ball. He loves running with the ball. That's what his game's about, Mark. You saw that at Aston Villa. That Jack Grealish loves running with the ball. Man City don't do that. Man City don't let their players, Pep Guardiola, doesn't let his players run with the ball. Pep Guardiola wants 1-2 touches, Mark, move on. But that was never Grealish's game. And then if you look at Haaland, Mark,
He's a pure knob, that Grealish, right enough, isn't he?
yeah, he wants the ball played into him, Mark, maybe to his head or played into the centre. And that's another reason, Mark, why maybe it mightn't work for Haaland at Man City, Mark, because I don't see him as a Pep Guardiola player. Do you get me?
He's I don't. He kind of reminds me a lot of Zlatan, Paul.
Yes.
Do
And
you know,
he's been injured a lot as well, Mark.
But if the ball goes into the box, I'm not comparing them. It's like what I've been saying about Giacomakis as well, Paul. Put the ball into the box, they're going to score the goals.
But Man City don't play that way.
No, that's what I know. That's what I know what you're saying. That's what I mean.
They don't play with wingers, Mark. They don't play with crossing the ball. Man City like to play their way into the box. You see that with most of their goals. They play their way into the box, like so De Bruyne, Goodwin. These are players who get into the box back to get the goals. Like Aguero, like what a player Aguero was, Mark. But Pep Guardiola came out and questioned Aguero a lot of times and said he never tracks back. Haaland never tracks back.
No,
That's not part of his game. He's never tracked back throughout his career, Mark. He doesn't have the speed to do that. He doesn't have the speed to track back and get back up the pitch. Do you know what I mean? That's why Harry Kane as well, Mark, would struggle in a Manchester City.
and he tried to force his way there too, wouldn't he? I said at the time, Paul, that would have been a bad move. He'd have become a very, he's obviously a very rich young man already, but if he moved to, if Kane had went to Man City, it's money, you know what I mean? Just basically, it was money, Paul. His wealth would have been totally astronomical.
Actually, I agree with Strangelove here. He said Grealish, isn't he the most fouled player in the English Premier League? If so, there's your reason. That's the reason he's the most fouled player, Mark, because he loves to run with the ball.
Aye.
The same as with Wilfred Zaha, because Wilfred Zaha likes to. I watch a lot of football, Mark. You know, do you know what I mean? And I watch players like Wilfred Zaha is another prime example of a player who likes to run. And I think, Mark, that I don't see Haaland being I no doubt, Mark, he's going to get goals from Man City, but I don't see him get the goals they're expecting.
I think he'd have been better going to Liverpool.
Yeah, or Man United, Mark, or Real Madrid. You know, I heard Barcelona actually pulled out of the deal, Mark. One, because of financial reasons, right? That's of course they had to pull out of it because of that. But another thing was because, Mark, of his constant injuries. Haaland does, you know. So I'd watch Haaland closely next season, Mark, and see maybe is Pep Guardiola going to change the way he plays. But Guardiola, Mark, has never changed his play for no one.
No, he doesn't like to change. He's been the same for years, hasn't he?
You're going, Mark. You're looking at their Zlatan. I think Guardiola hunt him out of Barcelona because of the way he played, and then he signed in Haaland, who, unlike yourself, is a similar player to Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Do you get me?
Aye. I know what you're saying. I mean, it's just what we're saying about Paul with Man City. Who's the best in the world, do you know?
That's it. And that's the only reason they signed him, Mark. That's exactly the only reason they signed him, I think. Do you know what I mean? Like, they've also signed another young Brazilian, Mark, striker as well. That's more suited to Ange's system. Not Ange's system, sorry, Pep Guardiola's system. I forget his name. Is it Nunes or something like that? Is a young lad called Nunes?
I don't know, Paul.
And this fella is supposed to be the next top Brazilian fella. So this Brazilian is more suited to Pep Guardiola system than actually Haaland is. But Man City, Mark, just buy players who they want.
Aye.
Do you know what I mean?
That Kai Havertz, Paul, I thought he was a great player there in Germany, and he's not really done it in England, didn't he?
Timmy Warner is another player.
Aye, there was another one, aye.
You know, I watched him, Mark, there the other day. Germany were playing Italy. It was only last night, I think, Mark. Last night I watched so bad I am for football now, Mark. I'm watching the Nations League, you know. But he's another player, Mark, who was brilliant over in Germany and struggled in the Premier League. You know, he looks a shadow of the player, Mark, he was for Borussia Dortmund, that young Timmy Warner, don't you?
Aye, the Germans, Paul, I don't think, obviously it's happened, I've went and been a success, but see me, all the great German players have really...
They stayed in Germany.
Aye, they've done it in Germany. When they go anywhere else, there's a few of them that really kind of make the grade and shine as much as they did in Germany. I mean, I used to see that Mario Goetze, as you pronounce it. I used to think he was a great player when he was at Dortmund. And then he went to Bayern Munich, but he had an illness and everything, didn't he? And he's never quite, I don't know if it's something to do with that. But he's in Holland now, isn't it? He was another one, just...
Well, all the Germans did that, Mark, didn't they? All the big Germans, they stayed in their own league.
Aye.
So look, one of the greatest goalkeepers in the world, Mark, was Oliver Kahn.
Aye.
Never moved from Bayern Munich. Do you know what I mean? A lot of the Italians, Mark, used to do it as well back in the day, didn't they? They stayed in their own leagues. So I mean, a lot of players, Mark, can't. That's why I think it's different with the young lad.
I mean, it's look at all these players, big players that have been raved about doing in England. Paul went abroad and flopped as well.
He's in there, Mark. Pulisic there, Mark. He's another player for Chelsea. Wasted. That's why like I'm going on about German players now, Mark, actually failing this, and we're actually looking at a young player, Christopher Scott from Germany. But the difference is in him, Mark, is because he's a player who would be suited to where Ange plays fast football. Do you get me? He's a player worth signing to fit our system.
He's plus exactly. As well, Paul. He's not coming out here with some kind of superstar reputation. That's the thing. These English teams will go and buy like the superstar signings for Germany that, and maybe they don't work. But there's probably players that people could probably list them and know that'll be players down in England playing. That'd be good.
Schweinsteiger for Manchester United, one of the best midfielders of his generation, Mark. Schweinsteiger.
Oh, aye.
One of the best things, Mark, and just came in.
He was too old as well.
He was too old, exactly. He was. Do you know what I mean? But back in the day, Mark, there you look back, and I'm sure a lot of our followers are my age as well to remember the West Germany teams, Mark. I remember West Germany lifting the World Cups like I'm 40, but I was young at the time, Mark. I can still remember it. They had the best players, Mark, there, like, didn't they?
Germany, some of the German players I've seen over the year, Paul, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge.
Yeah, brilliant.
Rummenigge he was different gravy, that guy. Well, he was one of the players that kind of sparked the imagination of young. See, like when the World Cup was on in that, Rummenigge was one of the players that really kind of sparked the imagination of the young boys about the scheming that at the time. Woody Waller, I know. Can you link him?
The hair, the car. I was trying to think of it, Mark. Woody Waller, boy.
Matthias.
You know, Philip Lahm, Mark, was another great defender of the generation. Oh, he was with Germany. But these are but these are players, Mark, who stayed in Germany. Do you get me? That's why the German teams were so big, Mark. They stayed in Germany. Now a lot of German players are playing outside Germany. And that's an interesting fact, Mark, was the last manager, the fella Lowe, banished Thomas Muller because he said Thomas Muller was too old. Right? And they struggled in the last European competition under Lowe, and people were screaming like, why did you leave out Thomas Muller? Bring him back. He was playing the squad last night, playing the team last night for Germany. Your man Hans brought him back because he was Bayern Munich manager. Do you mean experience, Mark? I know you might be up for 90 minutes or anything like that, but experience around the club or international is huge. Like, isn't it? It's huge to have these experienced players for the young players.
That's
why heart is crucial to Celtic, Mark, isn't it?
But that's like, it's like even players like, you look down in England and you're John Terry, Rio Ferdinand, Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes. They were maybe in the England, Scholes retired quite early for England set up, didn't he? But they were kept about the squad, Paul, longer than they were playing prop because of that kind of what you're saying, the experience that they bring into the team and help them, because you kind of need a bit of transformation, kind of. You can't just blitz something. Ange's done it this season, but you can't just blitz your international squad. You've got to have a kind of, no transformation, what's the word? Transition. You've got to have that kind of thing in the international teams.
And here's an interesting question for you, Mark, from Dr. Strelov, and I'm going to put this one to you because you've spoken about this kind of before in the podcast. As a third choice striker, would you go for a young player with potential or an older guy that's been there, done it, the likes of Zlatan and Cavani? Like, we know our two main strikers next season, Mark, are going to be Kyogo and Gianmarcus.
It's a hard one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think we could go and get that kind of level of like Zlatan or Cavani to sit and be third choice, but it's like what they done with Defoe, wasn't it? You just bring in somebody at the end of their career that's happy to be at a big club and maybe get a chance here and there, or do you promote somebody for their youth squad up?
Mark, give the lads an experience, Mark, about pass on his intelligence, Mark, of getting into the space, expecting the unexpected in the ball.
Aye. If you're going to go down that, you maybe look at somebody that's maybe looking to get into coaching. You know what I mean? So you bring them in as your third choice and give them kind of a wee, no, I don't mean make them a coach, but you give them a wee bit of insight into coaching and help them like Kyogo and Giacomakis, and then if we do need them, you'll guarantee him that you'll get game time. Make sure you get some game time in that, but you're basically just a backup today to help out with coaching and that kind of thing.
Definitely, Mark. It is, Mark.
Oh, if Cavani, there, Staines love saying there, Cavani's in a free, just saying, if he was willing to come, I'd take that in a heartbeat.
Definitely, Mark, you would buy, wouldn't he? There's a marquee signing by, isn't there?
Aye.
It's a marquee signing. You know, but...
Wait, just see now. Wait, just Cavani now, Paul.
35, 37, like I said, 36, 37. I say he's old, like Cavani. He is, like, but see, Cavani last season, Mark...
35.
Was just injured. Do you know what I mean? Injured.
Aye.
You know, like, if we're looking at... I think we saw, Mark, this season... the young lad Veta is way too young to take that step up. The young lad Dawson, he's 19, Mark. I think it's too much for him at the moment to come up into the fight. He did do well, Mark, when he came in. He held ball up well and stuff like that. But to have him as a third tight striker, Mark, next season, I think it's could be too much. I do think we need to sign a striker, but.
You've got to remember as well, Paul, there is a good chance that they're going to be called upon to do a job. Do you know what I mean?
But that's what I'm saying, Mark. But then, are you going to sign a striker of good quality, Mark? And when you're signing him, Mark, you're going to have to tell him you're going to provide competition for these three lads. And that's us then, Mark. We're going to be forking out big money, Mark, then. You know what I mean? Are we going to sign a striker just to fill that third choice?
What's Robbie Keane up to?
Yeah, I tell you why, he still do a job for Mark, I said.
But I've said all
back. I remember when the internet crashed that time, when the internet wasn't long out. Robbie Keane signed by the Celtic site crashed and stuff like that. You know.
One of the happiest days of my life.
You know, in the club for only half the season, Mark ended up top goal scorer and everything. Like that was just a match made in heaven, Mark, wasn't it? Robbie Keane and Celtic.
Aye. It was just Paul, it's one of these signings, but that see if we had enough money, we could have signed like the likes of Rob. I mean, people are just signing Irish guys, but you've got to look at some of these Irish guys. Exactly. Robbie Keane, Roy Keane. I mean, if we were doing in that Premier League or our league, you get what I mean? Roy Keane would have chose Celtic or Man United.
There was just one thing that Betsy brought up about young Dembele. As far as I know, he was on the list that we just read out, and the list I got was the list of players released by Celtic, and Dembele was on it, released by the club from the 1st of June, Mark. Dembele was on that list. Now, when I look at his contract, it says the 30th of June, but I don't think, Mark, I think, Mark...
No, that's just dates, Paul. That doesn't make any...
I think Ange saw enough in Dembele, Mark, and he put him down to the Colts thing for a reason. Either Dembele told him he was moving, Ange didn't see enough in him. Like, Mark, you look at it, I think the problem with Dembele, Mark, he was hyped too much by the club.
But that's what happens, Paul.
Yeah, and I've watched the Colt teams, Mark, and I've watched Colts matches last season, Mark, and to be honest, Mark, I didn't see much in the young lad.
They're best he's seen it.
Yeah, but the club don't come out.
They've not confirmed it.
They don't come out and say that, Mark. He came out on, do you get me, the released players. Do you get me?
Aye.
And he came out on that list. The likes of Ross Doohan, Luke O'Connell, young Dembele, he was on the released players. So if you look at the released players, he's on that list. They're not going to come out, Mark, and just list one player out of...
That's just it, Paul. He was just over. He's been that hyped up. He was like a young lad. Everybody, wait till you see this boy. Wait till you see him. And see, come next season, Paul, there'll be somebody else probably. Do you get what I mean? These
players.
You
think so, Mark? Like by the club doing that, all right. Young Dembele, as a young 16-year-old, Mark. I remember we seen him doing the volleys, the heads and headers and stuff like that. Are we actually damaging the young players' progress by showing this stuff, getting the hype around the 16 player, and then he doesn't turn out to what we want him to be? Are we actually
That's all part
damaging
of
the player by doing that?
It's all part of kind of the public profile and stuff, Paul. Fans want to see things like that. Do you know what I mean? So the club gives him it, but for me it doesn't help because it just keeps getting hyped up. And we're getting back to Neil Lennon, right? Neil Lennon last season told Dembele that we get game time, but he didn't get it. But I keep saying it, Paul, I don't blame Neil Lennon for that, because that young boy was hyped up so much by Celtic fans. If Neil Lennon had thrown him into games where we needed to win,
I think
then the fans then look at it as if, well, if the manager thinks he's your saviour, we think he's our saviour, and then it goes wrong and it's all piled on that young boy's shoulders. Like, so I don't blame Neil Lennon for I really don't.
It's true what Dr. Strainer was saying as well, Mark, that this was just basically what you said. He had Lee Lennon, and Lee Lennon was a boss, Mark, that was going for 10 in a row. You know what I mean? He wasn't going to throw. And
so when the team wasn't playing well, you put that young boy in there, and that's him.
If he didn't get that ankle break as well, Mark, this season, just very unlucky this season, wasn't he?
Yeah, you know? I think if he hadn't get that injury, we'd have probably got a lot more game time this year.
More game time, Mark. And
was that cup game again? Was that what
pre-season?
Was that pre-season game?
The nasty tackle, pre-season.
Gucci to get injured in the cup game, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think Mark is actually maybe best for Dembele himself as well. To move on.
I hope the lad goes on to have a great career. I really do. I don't wish any young player leaving Celtic any ill will at all. It's a shame again. It's one of the ones. It's a shame it's not worked out. But you could list players throughout the years, Paul. They've been hyped up that much as they've been through the system and that, and very, very few of them have actually lived up to the hype.
Definitely. Two players, Mark, were still wondering about that were just brilliant last season, Mark. Throughout the season, Cameron Carter-Vickers just made a huge difference to the backline. The best partnership I've seen at Celtic for a long, long time with himself and Starfelt. Jota, his goals, he scored winning goals for us, Mark. He set up winning goals for us. We're still waiting, have they signed, have they haven't signed. They've been in holidays together with the clubs. What's your thoughts, Mark? What's going on, do you think?
With Jota and Carter-Vickers, I think it's just a matter of time before it gets announced, Paul.
I've asked about I've read about Cameron Vickers, right, and I think he's willing to come to Celtic, all right? He's willing to come, but there's an issue with Levy, and we know the way Levy is, Mark. He's a crude businessman. Spurs want most of the fee up front, a big hefty of the fee up front, Mark, and Celtic want to kind of put it less of a bulk in fee and kind of more in instalments, and I think that's the issue with.
That seems to be what it is, Paul. Yeah. Just how the deal's going to get paid for.
Breakdown, that seems to be the issue, Mark, because Tottenham are planning a big.
But come on, it's £6 million, right? For a start, if that's what Tottenham want, whether they want $3 million, but I mean, you can't. You look at the size of, right? You know, Spurs fans. We were talking about them earlier. Spurs are a massive club. They'll get plenty of money, Paul. Do you honestly think Spurs are haggling over how they're going to get £6 million for a player?
It's just the way he is, Mark.
It's just But the deal for me, that's just that's just him.
Because you've seen Mark deals.
Again, Paul, we've got to look at how we balance the books as well.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So maybe Celtic, they meet financial fair play stuff and that. Celtic maybe
and Mark,
can afford to.
It's down to our own budget as well, Mark.
That's what I'm saying.
We're expecting to sign, we're expected to place Beaton, we're expected to replace Rogic. We say we need a new striker. We're saying we need a new left back. You know, 6 million is quoted for the ball players, Mark. That's 12 million. I say roughly we have about 25 million to spend. Do you mean there's not much there, Mark, if you want to bring in good players? Do you know?
Oh, look
I
at the
know a
money
lot
was
of
spent.
transfers, Mark, aren't done up front. Do you get me? But but it has to be. These two fellas, Mark, are key to Celtic next season, because Cameron Vickers, without doubt, Mark, has been one of the best players for Celtic last season.
Oh, aye, without a doubt, Paul. I've said it plenty to you as well. But if it was a choice between the two,
I was right, Mark. 2019, he joined Bayern Munich, Liam Morrison. 2019.
because it says it in Wikipedia.
No, if you
Mark,
go into
you haven't only changed that. You haven't only changed that.
Bayern Munich's list of players, Mark, is 2019.
I just put the link up to his page on Transfer
I
Market.
saw the one. Don't mind your transfer, Mark. I never looks at that.
Never mind your Wikipedia. You haven't only changed that.
Ederson signed it out.
You're one of these Wikipedia editor guys that changes things to suit what you're saying.
Like, it's just frustrating, Mark. Like, for me anyway. Anytime I look up Celtic or thing, I'm looking up. They're the two names I'm looking for. Vickers and Jota, to have this signed. I think.
I'm not worrying about it in the slightest, Paul. I think both of them will be done.
Definitely.
It's just timing, and even down to the fact the transfer window. Right, we could announce them if they were done, but nothing can be made official till the transfer window opens. Because even these things that get announced, you can't register for another club.
If you were a player, Mark, that was leaving at the end of the season last season, you wouldn't have been celebrating the way Jota was celebrating.
You don't know.
No, Mark, you wouldn't, Mark.
Paul, see the thing about it, right? Can you see any other team that's going to be in the Champions League next year coming in for any of the two players?
No.
No. Let me rephrase that then. Can you see any team like at a higher level in the Champions League?
The only team, Mark, that I'm looking at, that I said it to you, Mark, when I spoke to one of my work colleagues that he follows Spurs, and he was over there, and he said that the talks are that there's a few English Premier Leagues that are looking at things, but there's nothing there concrete. It's the likes of
there was
Fulham that came up.
Leicester were watching them as well.
Everything was supposed to be looking at them, but everything now, Mark, have actually supposedly switched their attention to Ayer.
Everton, aye. Yeah. I knew that, aye.
So, like...
They're Paul's, right, but... Yes, supposedly Carter Vickers is sitting there and he's like, right, I've got a choice of Leicester, Fulham or Celtic. Right, see, even again, Paul, I can go and play in the Champions League next year.
Exactly.
I've been there, done it, and see, even if he leaves, he leaves next summer, it's still like he still gave 2 years service to the club.
Because I think next season
he's selling for a profit. He's played in the Champions League. Then what teams could he catch that highway after another season with Celtic?
Prove his point, Mark.
Aye.
Because he has one good season, Mark, actually throughout his whole career. This is actually, he said it himself, like, this has been his best season throughout his career. Like, I'm looking at Leicester, Mark, and I think next season is a big season for Brendan Rodgers at Leicester.
I don't think you'll last the season down
there,
there,
There's a list
Paul.
of players, Mark, who actually want to leave.
That Tillmans and that wants out, didn't they?
Yeah, and their squad is aging, Mark. They're dependent on Vardy. Vardy's 35, 36 now, Mark. He's lost an edge. He's been injured for most of the season. He's going to be picking up injuries. I think Rodgers, Mark, days are numbered.
I'd agree with that.
You spoke to Ed Warren, Mark, and he says this kind of circle happens with Brendan Rodgers. His teams die out. They die out.
Aye.
And we've saw that Celtic, Mark. He's cycling with us.
One says, when I speak to him, we don't really talk about Brendan Rodgers much now in that because he's not Celtic, but even when he went to Leicester and he won the cup and that, Ed Wan said to me, well, just give it time. Just give it time, that's what happens. His teams peak and then they just fall away into like mediocrity.
I've never rated Vardy, Mark. Never rated Vardy. I've never rated Jamie Vardy.
I think he's because he kind of worked his way up for like non-league football and that, Paul. I kind of respect him for that because but
I'm more interested now in.
I don't like it. I've never liked him. It's just he's got
I'm
that
more
kind of wee
interested,
face
Mark,
that you would like
in
to
his
just
wife's
slap a
court
bit.
case. I'm more interested now in his wife's court case with Colleen than I am about him breaking into the first team. Do you know what I mean?
No, it's just he could play for Rangers. When you look at him, you can see when you look at him, you can see him with a Rangers strip on. You get that kind of face you just want to slap a bit.
Yeah, that tuggery about him.
Tuggery.
Yeah. That's it for tonight. Thanks to
Done all right there, bud. 2 hours of talking absolute garbage.
Thanks for joining us tonight on the live chat. Thanks to Bestie, Patrick. Who do we have? We had Bobby, Dr. Strangelove, John Wallace joined us throughout the show there. There was a new subscriber who said, Mark.
There's a couple of new names there tonight, Paul. Craig Brown.
I just hope you're not the Craig Brown and you're actually coming back to Celtic. Jeez.
That was Jock Brown, that was his brother.
Is that Jock? Well, Craig Brown was the Scotland manager, wasn't
he? Aye.
Yeah, but didn't Jock Brown, Mark, when he was at Celtic, and I think we spoke about before, didn't he have this kind of football operations role at Celtic, didn't he? That was kind of his role,
he was like a kind of... I probably was like a kind of director of football.
Director of football, kind of that kind of.
No, in fact, see when you think back, Paul, it was probably more like a CEO role, because he was a lawyer, so he knew all about like contracts and that kind of that. You know what I mean? That's what he was. He was a fancy lawyer. He was a QC. I think I'm not sure about it, but I think it was more that kind of job that he looked after a lot of more like the legally contract side and kept Ferguson straight and narrow. But
was it him?
It was a lot of
that Vin Janssen kind of
general manager. That was his job title. Strangelove just said that's what his job title was, general manager. But I kind of seemed to do a bit of everything. And
yeah, but I think that's kind of because you look back to those days, Mark, there was no director of football.
No.
So maybe that was kind of.
No, that's back to the times, Paul, when a manager just ran everything.
Yeah, maybe that's a similar role, Mark, that we could actually link to a director of football was Jock Brown's role.
Probably was back at that time. It might have been that kind of thing, aye.
You know?
But I mean, it was Jock Brown and Vim Janssen. Just, I don't think they ever got on for the day they met.
No, I think that kind of later came out in his book, Mark, wasn't it? That himself and kind of Jock Brown didn't see eye to eye, and you know, like that was one of the best days I've ever been a Celtic supporter, Mark, was stopping them down to 10. But last season, Mark, for me, that's
the icing in the cake.
Yeah, it was, Mark. It was a special title last season. Like it really was.
There was the Champions League spot, Paul. That was really important that we got that. But just even if it hadn't been for that, just getting the league title back.
Before we go, Mark, right? Before we go on, and you know we don't like talking about the opposite side on their thing, right? But what has this done to the old firm? No, that they haven't won the league. They haven't got the automatic Champions League spot. No, they still could get there through the qualifiers, but we've seen it, Mark, how tough it actually is in the qualifiers. You know what I mean? And they're giving new contracts now to Davis. McGregor looks like he could be signing. Are they in financial trouble, do you think, Mark? Well, has it hit them?
No, as long as our directors and that want to put money in, Paul. It's when that stops them and these directors can't afford to put any more money in that the trouble will start. Because as long as the directors are willing to pump money in, I mean,
I can't see
the Europa League run, they're going on about. No way they made just 30 odd, 40 odd million or going on about
the max they made, Mark,
but that's helped them.
15 million, that's the max they've made.
But that's definitely helped them. But
I find it very hard that if the losers get 30 and the winners only get 20. Do you know what I mean? I find it very, very, very hard to believe that.
But
do you know what I mean?
That's when the directors either decide to stop putting money in or can't afford to keep putting money in, Paul. That's when the shit will hit the fan. But as long as they're keeping putting money in, they're just going to keep surging along. But I was reading something earlier, something came up, I clicked on it, there's some player they're meant to be looking at, but he's rated at £5 million. But it said they'll need to wait till later on in the transfer window to either qualify for the Champions League
Exactly. To go
or,
back to the situation
sell
where we was
Barisic
before,
or something.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way they're going to. I mean, I can't see them qualifying for the Champions League.
But is Kent's in his last year? Morales, Mark, is in his last year, isn't he?
I think so now, aye.
So these are players, Mark, maybe.
Well, it's like Julian. I mean, Kent, it's down to kind of your, like we are with Julian, it's your stick or twist.
Yeah.
You offer him a new contract, and if no, you need to sell him this summer.
Yeah, I think, Mark, that.
He doesn't want to be there. He's not been there for he fell out with his girlfriend.
Yeah, and since Gerrard left now as well, Mark, he was kind of Gerrard's kind of pet, wasn't he?
Aye.
Kent, you know what I mean? Because like Gerrard kind of signed him from this Liverpool and kind